Rhonda Rawlings, so excited to be with you today to talk about such an important issue. May is National Mental Health Awareness Month, and so important to get the word out that we need to be just as proactive about our mental health as we are about our physical health. And we have someone here this morning that's going to talk to us more about it, talk to us about different ways that we can start thinking more about our mental health, taking it more seriously, and ending the stigma of getting help. So please welcome Dr. Mildred Williams.
Hi,
Hello,
everyone. Hey, everybody.
how are you?
Doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
Doing great. Thank you so
Good.
much for doing this with us today. It's so important that we inform our community and talk to our community so that the stigma decreases surrounding mental health. May is National Mental Health Awareness Month, and Dr. Williams, when we say that, when we just say the term mental health, that's really sort of painting with a wide brush, if you will. Correct?
That's correct. That's correct. I do want to clarify one thing. When we think about the term mental health, is typically defined as the person's condition where it looks at their psychological and emotional well-being.
Mm,
So we actually use that term interchangeably with mental disorders and mental illness, but mental health actually is encouraging a person to have good mental health, if you will.
mm,
When we think about mental illness and an individual having a mental condition, that's typically a diagnosable mental illness that an individual might have from a doctor, psychiatrist, and there's usually a chemical imbalance in the individual's brain.
mm.
And so those are two different things. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that we use the term mental health, mental illness, mental condition all interchangeably, but they're distinctively different. Mental health is our encouraging individuals to take a wholeness approach to taking care of their well-being, and then mental illness and mental health conditions are pretty much the same in that the individual might have an actual diagnosis
Mm,
and a chemical imbalance in the brain. But
okay.
that can only be diagnosed from a medical professional, um, general practitioner, psychiatrist.
Okay. And that's really, and we can continue this discussion for so long. There's so many different things to talk
Yeah,
about just in what you just said. Can you talk about maybe just three different types or a couple of different types of mental illnesses or disorders
hmm
that people may encounter?
I certainly can. There are actually the top three that we know many folks struggle with. The first one, major depressive disorder, or you may hear an individual use the term clinical depression.
Mm,
They mean the same thing. They are typically mood disorders that um, are usually deemed by the individual having this persistent feeling of sadness, a loss of interest. They may cry a lot, they may sleep all the time, they may have a loss of appetite, isolate, memory loss. So there's so many different symptoms and signs that the individual might have that may have major depressive disorder or clinical depression. But again, um, a person can be going through the grief process and
mm,
have some of those same symptoms. So that's why it's so important to have a doctor look at the individual to make sure that they are appropriately diagnosed. The second one I wanted to mention is bipolar disorder. It is one of the most prevalent mood disorders. You may hear someone use the term major depressive disorder, I'm sorry, or manic depressive disorder, and bipolar disorder are actually the same thing. So it is marked by the individual having periods of highs and lows. So they have these ebbs and flows. They may have weeks or months of being depressed, staying in bed, can't go to work, um,
mm,
don't take care of their hygiene. They may do that for weeks or months at a time. And then all of a sudden they have this burst of energy where their brain is constantly racing. They're going. They are having difficulties with sleeping. And so the goal of medication, many times for folks who have manic depression or bipolar disorder, is to give them a steady flow in their brain chemistry. The final one I'd like to mention is the anxiety disorders, because this is so much more prevalent now, especially since we're supposed to be at the endemic of, of the pandemic. But anxiety disorder, or you may hear an individual talk about having a panic disorder. The most common one is generalized anxiety disorder. And usually the individual might have these persistent feelings of pending doom. Their heart start to race. They feel like they can't breathe. They feel like they're going to die. They may break out in a cold sweat. It is just a horrible situation for individuals who are struggling with anxiety or panic disorder. So many times when I served at the psychiatric hospital for over 25 years, one of the things that we would tell our patients to do is to slow down their breathing, try to come back into the here and now, meditation techniques, things like that. Again, even with anxiety disorder, the individual needs to be appropriately diagnosed. Two disorders under anxiety disorder that I think is important for me to mention is social anxiety disorder. And that is simply when individuals have a difficult time being around a crowd of people, and some of those symptoms might occur. The other one, which some folks don't understand, is an anxiety disorder, is post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And that term was coined from folks in the military. We see it with first responders, police officers, firefighters, EMS workers. And now we use it a lot when there is physical or sexual trauma that happens in an individual's life. Natural disasters, life-threatening events, they all are periods when an individual might have flashbacks and have a difficult time being able to push through life. So small things like July the 4th that we take advantage of and just love to hear the fireworks and see the fireworks. Someone who's been in the military, July the 4th is a horrible day for them time when they hear the fireworks, because it reminds them of being back in combat. So those are probably the top three that many of us suffer with.
Wow. And I'm glad you mentioned some different coping mechanisms in there as well, because I want to encourage people to keep following, our Long Branch social media, because in the coming weeks during this month, we will have someone to come on to talk to us about meditation and mindfulness and ways to use your breathing technique to sort of bring you back into the here and now. So many important skills. And I think too, as a culture, a lot of times, we have been through traumatic experiences. And sometimes when a lot of us are feeling sadness or we're feeling extreme stress, we just tend to press on and push ourselves. And, even family members can say, oh, all you need to do is go ahead and go outside. All you need to do is, go to church a little bit more. We'll push things aside, and we don't really take them as seriously as we should, because a lot of times when someone's feeling extreme sadness or extreme anxiety, it is a mental illness. It's not just something that you can push through on your own. So I just think we need to break that stigma within our community, within our families, and to let people know that it is okay to seek help. I read through the Mental Health America that 13.4% of the U.S. population identifies as Black or African American, and of those, over 16% reported having mental illness in the past year, which equates to over 7 million people. And those just the people that reported it and felt comfortable saying that this is what I'm going through.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely correct. What's really unfortunate about the population for Black and Brown people is that many of us do not want to be labeled with that stigma. Sadly, we use terms like a person is loony or crazy or wacko or they need to go to the loony bin. And so many times people just suffer in silence.
Hmm.
Even when you watch um, the news, many times, if there's a mass shooting or something like that, one of the first things they will say is the individual had untreated mental illness.
Mm.
So we even attribute mental illness to violence. And so what people do is they suffer in silence. They don't talk about what's really going on with them. They don't talk about the stresses that they have in life. And unfortunately, I know that from my research for the Black and Brown population, many also do not go seek help for a couple of reasons. Financially, they don't always have insurance where they can have, um, their mental illness accounted for financially. Many of them also, the bulk of the folks from my research also talked about this distrust and this mistrust with people who
Hmm.
look like them.
Yes. Wow.
So we've made the church our social service agency. So that's why I'm so glad that Long Branch is doing some of the things that we're doing in terms of the awareness. And we have to have a candid conversation about
Hmm.
mental illness and some of the other things that we suffer from. So, you know,
Definitely.
unfortunately, we just don't talk about it.
Definitely. Well, we really want to encourage people to keep following our social media pages. And of course, on Sunday mornings during service, we want to keep the conversation going through the month of May and beyond. It's so, so
Yeah.
important. But I don't want, thank you so much, first of all, again, for talking to us today. I don't want to end the conversation without just putting the call out to people that if you are suffering and it is an immediate need and you feel like you have no one to talk to, please call the number on the screen right now. It's the National Helpline, 1-800-662-4357. But we always encourage you to reach out to someone. But please, if you feel a dire need, if you feel like for some reason you can't go on, um, please call the suicide helpline if there's no one around for you to talk to. 1-800-273-8255. You can actually call or text. It's a suicide helpline, 1-800-273-8255. Dr. Mildred Williams, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. You're quite welcome. I just want to leave one other number that I failed to mention also. Starting in July, the state of South Carolina, this is actually going to be a national number. The same way we dial 911 for emergencies, we're implementing 988,
Hmm.
which will be a national mental health crisis line that individuals can call if they're struggling and they need help immediately. 988. That will be effective in July, and I'm sure you'll hear more about it as the days move forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you so much for having me. I appreciate